The morning sky above the little town of Red Hollow was the kind of faded gray that made everything look tired before the day had even begun. A gentle fog clung to the roofs of houses like a blanket they weren't ready to let go of, and the narrow streets were still wet from a night of quiet rain. It was the hour when only bakery ovens, elderly coffee drinkers, and school buses were awake, and the world moved in slow, sleepy breaths. But on Maplewood Lane, near the rustling branches of an old elm tree, a tiny figure stood alone at the edge of the sidewalk, too small for the backpack she carried, too quiet for the storm she had already lived through. Her name was Emily, 8 years old, brown hair in uneven braids, a bruise around her eye that the school nurse had asked about a dozen times, a bruise she always explained away with a trembling voice and impossible stories about falling, slipping, bumping, anything except the truth. That morning, Emily didn't look toward the houses behind her. She didn't wave goodbye to anyone. She simply stood there, hugging the straps of her bag like they were the only arms she could trust. The yellow school bus wheezed to a stop. Its doors groaned open. She climbed in quietly, took her usual seat by the window, and stared out as the fog thinned. The other children chatted and laughed, unaware of the weight she carried, unaware that the night before, Emily had cried herself to sleep after someone who was supposed to protect her had hurt her again. What none of them knew, what not even Emily knew, was that life had already begun weaving threads of fate toward her, and far away, the rumble of engines belonging to 50 men who lived by their own code would soon echo through her story like thunder rolling in from a desert horizon. But destiny takes its time. It begins with small, fragile moments, and on that dull morning, the smallest moment came when the bus passed by the edge of town, where the 2-lane road opened into the long stretch of highway that led toward the hills. That was where she saw them, parked in formation, leaning on thick black Harley Davidsons. A group of bikers stood like metal statues guarding the road, leather cuts, heavy boots, tattoos crawling up their arms, beards like wild thickets, and on the back of each vest, the emblem feared by many but understood by few, Hell's Angels. The children on the bus gasped, some pointed, some whispered. Emily didn't gasp. She stared, because in the middle of the group was a man sitting on a black, in red Harley, the morning light glimmering on his chrome like a second sunrise. He had a silver beard braided with tiny beads, eyes sharp but kind, and a presence that made the world seem smaller around him. His name was Bear, and when Emily's gaze locked on him, something inside her, something lonely, something desperate shifted. A man like that, she thought, a man like that would never let someone hurt me. The bus rumbled on, but Emily kept looking back until the bikers vanished behind the curve. She didn't know that Bear had noticed her too, and he felt something strange, something like the protective instinct of a father toward a child he had never met. The school day dragged, lessons blurred together. At recess, Emily sat alone beneath the big sycamore tree. Children played tag, swung on swings, shared snacks, but Emily watched from a distance, folding and unfolding the worn ribbons on her backpack. Every few minutes, her fingers brushed the side of her blackened eye, and she flinched. Nobody came to ask why, not anymore. When the final bell rang, the sky had turned from gray to pale blue, and the schoolyard buzzed with activity. Parents arrived, calling out to their children. Cars lined the curb, teachers waved, backpacks bounced. Emily walked slowly toward the gate, but her step froze when she spotted a familiar car, her stepfather's. The man who gave her bruises and called them mistakes. The man whose footsteps in the hallway were enough to make her hide under the bed with a pillow over her ears. He leaned against the car, tapping a cigarette, staring at her with the cold impatience of someone who liked feeling powerful. Her small heart pounded. Then a sound cut through the air, a sound like rolling thunder, a sound like 100 storms arriving together. Children turned, teachers looked up from their clipboards, even cars paused. Emily's breath caught, because over the hill, emerging in a long, perfect line, came a wave of motorcycles, chrome gleaming, engines roaring, leather jackets reflecting the sun like armor, the Hell's Angels. Not 1, not 10, 50. They rode down the street in formation, the ground trembling under them. Parents froze. Teachers rushed students aside. The school security guard stepped forward, unsure whether to run or call someone. The lead rider pulled ahead, Bear, and as the line of motorcycles slowed to the curb, Emily's stepfather straightened, confused, frowning. Bear cut his engine. Every other biker followed. Silence fell like a heavy curtain, the kind of silence that comes before a verdict. Bear took off his helmet. His silver braid swung over his shoulder. His eyes, sharp and dark and full of something fierce, locked directly onto Emily. She swallowed hard, her tiny hands shaking. He stepped off the bike and walked toward her with slow, deliberate movements, each step heavy with purpose. Children whispered behind her, "Are they here for her? What did she do? That's the little girl with the bruise." Bear stopped in front of her, kneeling so their eyes met. His voice was low, warm, steady. "Hey, kiddo," he said, "you okay?" She didn't speak. Her stepfather approached fast. "Hey, back off. I don't know who the hell you think you..." Before he could finish, 50 bikers turned their heads toward him in perfect unison. He froze. Bear didn't stand. He simply glanced at the man with a calmness more dangerous than anger. "We're not here for you," Bear said quietly. "We're here for her." Emily's lip trembled. Her small fists clenched. She looked at Bear, at the crowd, at the man she feared, and something inside her burst. She threw herself forward, wrapped her arms around Bear's neck, and whispered the words that broke every heart within earshot. "Please, please, be my dad." A wave of shock moved through the onlookers. Her stepfather's face turned red, but not with shame, only with rage. "Emily, get over here now." But she didn't move. Bear put one gentle, calloused hand on her back. "What happened to your eye?" he asked softly. Emily's sobs came like a dam breaking. He hit me again. I don't want to go home." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Bear stood up slowly, lifting Emily with him, holding her like something precious. Her stepfather lunged forward, but suddenly 4 enormous Hell's Angels stepped between them, blocking his path. Their expressions were carved from stone. One of them, a tall biker named Ironhead, spoke in a deep voice. "You touch that kid again, and we'll make sure the law reaches you faster than you can blink." Teachers escorted students away. Parents whispered urgently. Some filmed, some cried, some shook their heads in disbelief, but Bear wasn't watching any of them. He focused only on Emily. "You're safe now," he told her. "I promise you, nobody's gonna hurt you again." She buried her face in his chest. Police sirens approached, drawn by the commotion, but before they arrived, before the world rushed in with its questions and complications, Bear looked at Emily and said something she would remember for the rest of her life. "You didn't choose your father, kiddo," he whispered, "but you chose us, and we're not going anywhere." What followed in the hours, days, and weeks to come would become one of the most talked about stories in Red Hollow's history. A story of courage, protection, justice, and the unlikely bond between a little girl and 50 men society feared but rarely understood. A story kindness soul stories would tell so others could see that kindness can come from unexpected places, sometimes from the very people the world warns us about. And it all began with 4 small words spoken by a bruised little girl. "Be my dad." Bear held Emily with the kind of gentleness that didn't match the roughness of his hands. He could feel her tiny body trembling, every breath short and sharp like it hurt her to inhale. She clung to him as if the whole world were trying to pull her away, and he was the only thing anchoring her. Rain began again, very lightly, just a mist at first, floating down from the gray sky. It settled on Bear's shoulders, on Emily's hair, on the chrome of 50 motorcycles. The rest of the world blurred, fading into a quiet hum behind the storm of that moment. When the police car arrived, its lights flickered weakly against the heavy presence of the bikers. 2 officers stepped out, Officer Daniel Ruiz and Officer Kelly Monroe, both young, both clearly unsure what they were walking into. Ruiz took one look at the 50 Hell's Angels standing in formation and swallowed hard. Monroe reached instinctively for a radio, but Bear raised a hand. Not aggressive, just steady. "Officer," Bear said. "We're the ones who called." Emily lifted her head a little, peeking over Bear's shoulder at the police. Her swollen eye looked too big for her face, too bruised for her age. Ruiz's expression softened instantly. "My God, kid, what happened to you?" Before Emily could speak, her stepfather exploded. "She's lying. These men are kidnapping her. This is a setup. I'm her father. You're not my dad." Emily screamed, her voice breaking like glass. The shout froze everyone. Even the rain seemed to pause. Bear turned slightly, still holding the girl. "Officer, check the school cameras. Ask the teachers. Ask anybody here." The second this guy showed up, she panicked. Officer Monroe stepped closer. "Sir, we're going to need you to calm down," she told the stepfather. "Put your hands where I can see them." He glared. "You're taking their side. They're criminals." Ironhead stepped forward with a quiet chuckle. "Funny," says the man who hits kids. Ruiz looked sharply at the stepfather. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one time, did you strike this girl?" "No, she fell. Kids fall all the time." Emily's trembling voice rose again. "I didn't fall. I told you yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. You hit me." The truth hung in the air like thunder that had finally found its voice. Monroe's hand moved to her cuffs. "Sir, please turn around." "What? No, you can't." But he didn't finish the sentence. 50 bikers took a single step forward together. The sound of their boots hitting the pavement was so sharp, so unified, that the stepfather's knees nearly buckled. Monroe cuffed him quickly, guiding him to the car. As the door shut, the bikers stayed still, watching, unmoving protectors. The police radio crackled with additional units heading their way. Curious neighbors peered from porches. Teachers whispered in tight clumps. Children stuck to their parents' sides. Why? Died and silent, but none of them mattered to Bear. He only looked at Emily. "You're safe now," he repeated. "Nobody's taking you anywhere you don't want to go." Emily wiped her face with her sleeve. Can I stay with you?" Bear felt something twist in his chest. He wasn't a father. He didn't know how to be one, but he knew how to protect. And in that moment, he knew he couldn't walk away from this girl even if the whole world demanded it. Officer Ruiz stepped over. "Sir, we'll need statements, and child services will have to get involved. But for now, does she have any other relatives? Anyone safe she can stay with?" Emily shook her head quickly. "No, no one." Bear took a long breath. "Then she stays with us, until this gets sorted." Ruiz hesitated. Monroe lowered her voice. "Sir, with all due respect, I'm not sure the state's going to agree to that." Bear looked at her with the kind of steady calm that could steady oceans. "She stays with us," he repeated, "or she goes into a system that failed her every time she said she was scared. I don't think you want to make that mistake again." Ruiz rubbed his forehead. "Look, I'm not saying no, I'm saying it's complicated." Ironhead stepped closer. "We got a whole clubhouse with rooms for guests. We got women in the club who can help. We got more food than an army. That kid'll be safer with us than half the damn town." Emily pressed her face into Bear's vest. "Please," and that one word was enough. Ruiz nodded. "Okay, temporary custody until Child Protective Services arrives, but she stays in town, and she stays safe." Bear nodded once. "That we can promise." The officers took statements, gathering what they could. Teachers came forward to confirm what they had seen. One of them, Mrs. Hartman, looked ashamed. "I asked her so many times. She whispered. She always said she fell. I should have called earlier." Bear gave her a gentle look. "Kids lie to protect the people who hurt them. You asked. That matters." The rain stopped. The second police car arrived to take the stepfather away. As it pulled off, Emily watched with wide eyes, not with triumph, but with relief that settled deep in her bones. Moments later, Bear adjusted her in his arms. "All right, kiddo," he said, "ready to go." Emily nodded like a tiny bird taking its first brave breath. Bear carried her toward the motorcycles. Riders stepped aside respectfully, forming a protective corridor. Their vests gleamed, their boots darkened the wet ground, their faces softened when she passed. For the first time, Emily didn't feel like a shadow. She felt seen. Bear placed her gently on the back of his Harley, securing her with a small strap. She looked so tiny against the big machine, like a kitten sitting on a lion. "Is it safe?" she asked. "For you?" Bear smiled, always. He put his helmet gently on her head. It swallowed her, too big for her little face, but she laughed the first sound of joy she had made all day. Bear swung onto the bike in front of her, and her small hands clung to the back of his vest. He revved the engine. One by one, 50 more engines answered, rising in a wall of sound that shook the air itself. The schoolyard erupted in screams of amazement. Teachers covered their ears. Parents grabbed phones to record the unbelievable sight of 50 Hell's Angels escorting a little girl like she was royalty. The front row of riders tightened formation. Bear turned his head slightly. "You ready, kiddo?" Emily squeezed him lightly. "I'm ready." And the convoy rolled forward, slow at first, then powerful, then unstoppable. The sound echoed through the town like a promise carved into the earth. People stepped onto porches. Shops paused business. Traffic stopped. Everyone watched as the fiercest men in town escorted the smallest, most fragile soul they had found. Somewhere between the school and the long open road, Emily laid her head gently against Bear's back and fell asleep, because for the first time in her life, she felt safe enough to close her eyes. The bikers rode in silence, guarding her like knights from another century. When they reached the Angels' clubhouse, an old, repurposed warehouse with murals of wings and wheels, Bear switched off his engine and looked down. Emily was still sleeping, her tiny fingers curled against his vest. Ironhead whispered, "She's out cold." Bear nodded. "Let her rest." He lifted her gently and carried her inside, where the clubhouse women Mama June, Red Tina, and Cricket rushed toward them with blankets, warm milk, and fury in their eyes at the sight of the bruise. Mama June cupped Emily's face. "Oh, sweetheart, who could hurt such a little angel?" Emily stirred awake, blinking up at these new strangers. Fear flashed across her face. "It's all right," Bear said softly. "These ladies will take care of you, better than any of us." Emily's grip on his vest tightened, a silent plea not to leave. Bear understood. "I'm not going anywhere," he told her. She relaxed a little. Mama June wrapped her in a blanket and sat her on a nearby sofa. "Honey, you hungry?" Emily nodded shyly. Red Tina left for the kitchen. Cricket sat beside her, brushing Emily's tangled hair gently with her fingers. Bear sat across from them, elbows on his knees, watching her like a guardian made of steel and worry. He knew this wasn't the end. He knew the legal system would come knocking. He knew there would be questions, challenges, maybe even attempts to take her away. But in his heart, the part of him that had seen war, loss, brothers buried on the side of highways, something hardened into a vow. This child would not go back to terror. She would not sleep afraid. She would not cry alone. She would not carry bruises from the hands of a coward. Bear looked at Ironhead, at Mommy June, at the entire clubhouse gathering silently around the little sofa where Emily sat sipping warm milk. "She's ours now," Bear said quietly, "until she's safe, until she's healed, until she never has to ask for a dad again." And 50 voices responded together, as steady as thunder rolling across a desert. Amen. Night fell slowly over the Hell's Angels clubhouse, the kind of slow descent that soothed the edges of a long and heavy day. Outside, the motorcycles cooled in silence, faintly clicking as the engines settled. Inside, low lights cast warm amber glows across the wooden tables, the leather couches, the framed memories of long rides and fallen brothers hanging on the walls. Emily sat curled on the large sofa, wearing one of Mama June's oversized t-shirts that nearly reached her knees. The bruise around her eye looked even darker beneath the soft lighting, but her breathing was steadier now, each inhale a little less fearful than the last. Bear sat nearby in one of the old, deep armchairs, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped as if he were holding the entire world in his palms. He had been watching her quietly for nearly an hour, letting her settle, letting her feel the weight of safety around her. Ironhead leaned against the far wall, arms crossed over his chest, eyes fixed on the door in case anyone dared interrupt their peace. A few other bikers sat in silence, speaking only in low murmurs when necessary, their presence forming a silent circle of protection. Mama June walked over with a warm bowl of mac and cheese, steam drifting gently from its surface. "Here you go, sweetheart," she whispered, setting it in front of Emily. Emily picked up the spoon slowly, cautiously, as if she still expected to be scolded for spilling, or eating too slowly, or not finishing every bite. She raised the first spoonful with trembling fingers. "Eat as much as you want," Mama June added, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face. "And if you don't want it, that's okay too. Nobody here's going to be mad." The reassurance hit Emily so deeply she had to blink away a sudden sting of tears. She took a tentative bite, then another, and another. Within minutes, she was eating with the hunger of a child who had known too many nights of being told to go to bed without supper. The entire room watched her in a silence that felt like reverence. When she finished, Mama June took the empty bowl gently from her lap. "You want anything else, honey?" she asked. Emily shook her head. "Thank you." Her voice was small but steady. Cricket sat beside her, holding out a small stuffed bear. Patched, worn, one of the clubhouse toys left behind by visiting families long ago. "You want this?" Cricket asked. Emily touched it softly. "Can I?" "It's yours," Cricket smiled. "Forever if you want." Emily hugged the little bear tight against her chest, as if she were afraid someone might take it back. Bear watched the moment closely. It wasn't just a toy she was holding. It was a piece of normal childhood she had never been allowed to have. Outside, a motorcycle approached. Ironhead's muscles tensed instantly. Bear stood. A biker entered Bones, the club's scout. His boots were coated with dust from the road. "All clear," he said. "Cops took the guy to county lockup. He's screaming about lawyers, saying he wants his girl back." Emily shrank into the sofa, clutching the stuffed bear so tightly her knuckles turned white. Bear knelt in front of her again. "Kiddo, look at me." She looked up slowly. "Nobody's taking you back there," he said, his voice like iron dipped in warmth. "You hear me? Nobody." Emily nodded, but her lower lip shook. "What if they make me go? What if the judge doesn't believe me? He always says no one will believe me." Bear held her small hands in his big, scarred ones. "Kid, we believe you, and we're not going to let anyone silence you again." Ironhead stepped closer and knelt beside Bear. "You got 50 men standing here ready to fight for you, and 50 more coming if we call." Bones added from behind them, "And not one judge in this county wants 50 Hell's Angels sitting in their courtroom staring them down." A small, weak smile tugged at the corner of Emily's mouth, her first smile in a very long time. Bear stood and looked at his brothers. "We need to get our ducks in a row. This is going to be a fight." Ironhead nodded. "Then let's get ready." The clubhouse shifted into motion. Some men made calls to lawyers the club trusted. Tough ones, smart ones, the kind who didn't blink when the stakes were life and death. Others checked security cameras around the clubhouse, making sure nobody would come near the girl without being seen. Few of the older bikers wrote down everything Emily had said so far, preparing statements for the police and child services. Bear sat back in the armchair for a moment, watching the storm of activity unfolding around him, and felt a sense of pride in the family he had chosen. And the family that had chosen him. Emily rubbed her eyes. "You tired, kiddo?" Mama June asked gently. Emily nodded. Mama June stood. "Come on, sweetheart, let's get you to bed." Fear flashed on Emily's face. "Do I have to sleep alone?" Mama June smiled warmly. "Oh, honey, no. You can sleep anywhere you want. You can sleep in the girls' room with me and Cricket. Or you can sleep in the lounge here if it makes you feel safe. Whatever feels right to you." Emily looked at Bear. "Can I sleep where I can see you?" Bear's heart squeezed tightly. "Yeah, kiddo," he said. "You can sleep right here. I'll be right in that chair." She nodded, trusting him completely. Mama June turned one of the big couches into a soft bed, layering blankets, placing the stuffed bear beside the pillow, and setting a small night lamp nearby. As Emily crawled under the covers, she looked up at Bear again. "Are you gonna stay?" Bear sat down in the armchair. I'm not going anywhere." She relaxed, her breathing slowing, her eyes fluttered, and within minutes, she drifted into sleep. Bear watched her for a long while, the quiet rise and fall of her breathing, the tiny hand clutching the stuffed bear. This little girl, bruised and broken, had walked into his life like a storm, unexpected, wild, impossible to ignore. He didn't understand it fully yet, but something had changed in him the moment she grabbed his vest and begged him to be her dad. Bones approached quietly. "You okay, big man?" Bear let out a breath. "I don't know what I'm doing." Bones smirked. "You're doing fine." "I'm no father." "You don't need to be a father," Bones said. "You just need to be better than the bastard she had." Bear chuckled softly. "Hell, that ain't hard." Bones looked at the girl and then back at him. "You know, the universe does strange things. Maybe she found you for a reason." Bear didn't respond, not out of doubt, but because he felt that same truth pulsing inside his chest like a quiet drum. Hours passed. Most of the bikers drifted home or crashed in spare rooms. Ironhead, Bones, and 2 others remained on watch, rotating shifts near the entrance. Mama June and Cricket slept in the back room. Bear didn't sleep. He sat in the chair, eyes shifting between the front door and the little girl who had finally drifted into a peaceful, deep rest. At around 3 in the morning, she stirred, letting out a soft whimper. Bear leaned forward. "You okay, kiddo?" Emily blinked awake, her small face peering at him over the blanket. "Are you still there?" "Yeah," he whispered. "I told you I'm not going anywhere." She breathed out shakily. "I had a dream he was coming." Bear shook his head gently. "He's not coming here. He's not ever laying a hand on you again. You're safe." Emily studied him in the dim glow of the night lamp. Can I stay with you forever?" Bear froze. Not because he didn't want to say yes, but because his yes would carry the weight of an entire future. He knelt beside her, brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, and whispered, "We'll take this one day at a time, but you don't have to be scared of tomorrow anymore, not while you're with us." Emily nodded slowly, trusting him more deeply than she had trusted anyone in her life. She closed her eyes again. Bear stayed kneeling beside her until her breathing softened into sleep once more. Only then did he whisper something so quietly no one else in the room could hear. "I'll protect you, kiddo, I swear it." Morning came like a soft dawn over a battlefield. Light slipped through the blinds, casting stripes across the floor. The clubhouse began to stir as bikers returned, one by one, with coffee, breakfast, updates. And with them, something heavier, rumors, talk, trouble brewing fast. Bones stepped inside, his expression serious. "Bear, county courthouse called. They're moving fast. Child Services wants to take her today." Bear felt his chest tighten. "Like hell they are." Ironhead stepped forward. "This is going to turn into a war." Bear looked at Emily sleeping peacefully, still clutching the stuffed bear, then let it. And so began a fight far bigger than any brawl, any road war, any feud the angels had ever seen. A fight, not for territory, or pride, or honor, but for a little girl whose life had finally been given a chance.